it is sunny on Tuesday, inshallah ta'ala, so we hope that the weather will be okay, inshallah, and we all enjoy it. There will be some guests, some speakers from around 6:30, inshallah ta'ala, so please do come early. You can hear them as well outside. So this event will be with Muslim Welfare House and Islamic Relief. So the three organizations, Finsbury Park Mosque, Muslim Welfare House and Islamic Relief, are doing it together, inshallah ta'ala. So it will be, as we said, this Tuesday, inshallah ta'ala, outside the mosque. We need volunteers. So if anyone, brothers or sisters, would like to volunteer during this event, please do register your name with the security downstairs or in the office, inshallah ta'ala. Come and register your name. We need some volunteers to help us preparing for the event from Asr time on Tuesday. So the volunteers should come at Asr time, inshallah ta'ala, to help out, inshallah. Finally, we will have the Qur'an competition, as we usually do during Ramadan, the Qur'an competition to our young people, boys and girls. So this year will be three categories: Surah Al-Baqarah, up to 20 years old, inshallah ta'ala, for girls and boys. Surah Al-Kahf, up to 16 years old, as well, for boys and girls. And Juz' Amma, up to 10 years old, for boys and girls. So I urge the families, the parents, mothers and fathers to encourage their children, inshallah ta'ala, to participate in this competition. And there will be, inshallah ta'ala, some presents and gifts to our young people, inshallah ta'ala, who will be winning the competition, inshallah ta'ala. The registration will be from tomorrow, Saturday, until next Friday. So from tomorrow, Saturday, until next Friday, between Asr and Maghrib. Anytime Sheikh Omar here, our Sheikh who lead the Taraweeh, he will be in his office. Please register your children during that time, inshallah ta'ala. From tomorrow, after Asr until Maghrib, Sheikh Omar will be available to register the children and the young people, inshallah ta'ala. And the test of the recitation will be Saturday, the 15th of April, just before the 27th of Ramadan, where we will be announcing the winners, inshallah ta'ala. So the test and the recitations will be Saturday, 15th of April, inshallah. May Allah, between Dhuhr and Maghrib, inshallah, between Dhuhr and Maghrib. But when you register, Sheikh Omar will explain more, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair, may Allah accept from all of us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله
صراط القائمات محمد رسول الله وبعث به مقام الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له، ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، ونشهد أن سيدنا حبيبنا محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالحق بشيرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه وسراجا منيرا. أما بعد، قال الله تبارك وتعالى: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. وقال الرسول: يا ربي إن قومي اتخذوا هذا القرآن مهجورا. And on that day, the Prophet will say, O my Lord, behold, some of my people neglected the Qur'an. O my sustainer, behold, some of my people have come to regard the Qur'an as something to be discarded. وقال الرسول يا ربي إن قومي اتخذوا هذا القرآن مهجورا. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam will say to Allah on the day of judgment, Ya Allah, some of my people neglected the Qur'an, abandoned the Qur'an, discarded the Qur'an, ridiculed the Qur'an, deserted the Qur'an, forsook the Qur'an and shunned the Qur'an. They migrated far away from the Qur'an. This is what Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam will say to Allah. I know you're thinking, how can Muslims do that? How can Muslims migrate from the Qur'an? Because the Arabic word mahjura here comes from the Arabic word hijrah, which means to migrate, to move away, to abandon, to discard, to leave. My brothers and sisters, how Muslims can abandon the Qur'an has been very beautifully summed up by an Indian former president of India, a Hindu gentleman who had read the Qur'an and had taken a keen interest on Islam. And in the 70s or 80s, he wrote a Hindi poem. And I'm not going to read the original poem to you, but I'll read the translation to you. He wrote, it was a command for action. You turned into a book of prayer. It was a book to understand. You read it without understanding. It was a code for the living. You've turned it into a manifesto for the dead. A book came with knowledge. You handed it over to the fools. It came to unveil the mysteries of the universe and the creation. You abandoned it to the school curriculums. It came to give life to the dead nations. You used it for seeking mercy for the dead. O Muslims, what have you done? It's a Hindu gentleman saying this to the Muslims. What have you done to the Qur'an? On the day of judgment, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam will rise along with all of us. And the last person who you want to speak against you is the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on that day. Because he's the only person who would be given permission to speak. And you better hope that he speaks for you, not against you. We better hope that he stands and asks Allah for mercy, asks Allah to have mercy on all of us and grant us paradise. If he speaks against you and I, we're in trouble, and he will speak against you and I, because Allah says that in the Qur'an. He says, he will say on the day of judgment, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّي إِنِّي قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. Oh my Lord, some of my people migrated from the Qur'an, abandoned and left the Qur'an. Allah's Prophet Muhammad will say this on the day of judgment to Allah. What do you think will be our fate on that day? When his Prophet ﷺ would say anything like this to Allah the Almighty, who is now accounting all of us for our behavior. I have written down 7 levels of abandonment of the Qur'an. I have given 7 levels of abandonment of the Qur'an. Level number one on abandonment, first level of abandonment, in other words, is not to love the Qur'an. First level of abandonment is not to love the Qur'an. The Qur'an is the word of Allah. And if you believe in Allah, and if you love Allah, why would you not love His words? And loving the words of Allah means you shape your life by the teachings of the words of Allah, the Qur'an itself. If you truly love Allah, then you will shape your life by the Qur'an. In kuntum tuhibbun Allah fattabi'uni yuhbibkum Allah. If you truly love Allah, then follow me, and Allah will love you. Rasul ﷺ said, he was living manifestation of the Qur'an. And if he says, if you truly love Allah, show your love by following my footsteps. Allah sent me as a messenger, Rasul ﷺ said to all of us. And if you truly love Allah, follow the words of mine, my actions, my approvals, everything that I do, follow them, for that will definitely bring Allah's love on you. And if you truly love Allah, you shall put the Qur'an in your life as a real manifestation of the words of Allah. Loving the Qur'an means you accept all parts of the Qur'an and not selectively cherry pick between this verse and that verse, or pick and mix, as I call them. I like this verse, I'll take it. I don't like that verse, I'll leave it. It doesn't work like that. And if you, my brothers and sisters, don't love the Qur'an, then you will have Rasul ﷺ saying, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّي إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, oh Allah, these people did not love your words. They did not love the Qur'an. They did not shape their life according to the Qur'an. They're the ones who abandon the Qur'an. And if that happens to you and I are in big trouble. He is the witness, the key witness, the only witness who has the right to speak. And he says, you did not love Allah because you did not love the Qur'an. That's a big problem. Second level of abandonment is not to read the Qur'an. Second level of abandonment is not to read the Qur'an. The Qur'an literally means to read aloud, recite aloud. When we fail to read the Qur'an, we desert the Qur'an. When we have Qur'an in our houses as items of decoration, gathering dusts at the top shelf, unreachable by most people, or hanging on the wall as a decorative piece, demonstrating its calligraphic prowess, you and I have abandoned the Qur'an. Qur'an did not come down for you and I to put it as a decoration or as a calligraphic display. No, Qur'an came down for a different reason. If you fail to read the Qur'an, Rasul ﷺ will speak against you and I on the day of judgment. He will say, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّ إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. Oh Allah, my people, some of my people had abandoned the Qur'an. If you just have the Qur'an decorated on your shelves, gathering dust, you take it down in the month of Ramadan, you undust it, and you put it back on the top shelf. Read the Qur'an regularly, my brothers and sisters. When you read the Qur'an, make an effort to read it properly and with some feeling. Show that there is something inside you that connects with the Qur'an. Read, for reading has an empowering impact on you. Otherwise, you and I will be stuck with the same problem. وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّي إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. Oh Allah, my people, some of my people had abandoned the Qur'an, he will say. The third level of abandonment is not to listen to the Qur'an. The third level of abandonment is not to listen to the Qur'an. When Qur'an is being recited, listen to it very carefully. Allah says that in the Qur'an. When Qur'an is being recited, listen to it. Listen to it carefully. The words of Allah has a definite impact on your soul, on your mind and on your heart. Even when Rasulullah was reading the Qur'an to the enemies of Allah in Mecca, their hearts were shaken. When Surah Najm was revealed, and it was the first ever recitation of the Qur'an in public Rasulullah did in Mecca in front of the Kaaba. He stood in front of the Kaaba and he recited whole of Surah Najm. And when he came to the end of the surah, there is an order for prostration. And Rasulullah from standing fell down on the ground prostrating. All the Quraysh, all the Meccans who were present, many of them were non-Muslims, they all also fell on the ground prostrating except one. One person didn't, but the rest of them did. Even the enemies of Allah found listening to the Qur'an impactful. You abandon the Qur'an by not listening to the Qur'an. Many of our houses, my brothers and sisters, today are blurting out, blasting away music of all nature, songs of all kind. Qur'an is hardly a regular play in our houses. Though Qur'an is available at the fingertips of every single phone that you and I have, every single device that you have, there is no excuse not to have the Qur'an playing at your house, in your car. But instead people listen to all sorts of rubbish that infects their brain, alters their thinking and their behavior. Why not read the Qur'an that will heal you, that will soothe you, that will calm you, that will make you think again and again about your purpose in life and connect with the Creator, the one who made you, the one who gave you soul and a life. Read the Qur'an. Third level of abandonment of the Qur'an is not to listen to the Qur'an. And if you don't listen to the Qur'an, the same problem again. وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّي إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. Rasulullah will say again on the day of judgment, Oh Allah, some of my people abandoned the Qur'an. Fourth level of abandonment is not to understand the Qur'an. Fourth level of abandonment is not to understand the Qur'an. And this is the most serious one. In fact, not listening to the Qur'an and not reading the Qur'an is not a sin, but not understanding the Qur'an is a sin. Take this very clearly. Not reading the Qur'an and not listening to the Qur'an is not a sin, but not understanding the Qur'an is a sin, because it came down as a guide. Qur'an came down, Allah gave it down, sent it down for understanding of people. Allah invites you and I to take moments to think. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ. Are you not going to deeply reflect on the meaning of what Qur'an has brought down to you? Are you not going to use your brain to make a deeper understanding? Allah encourages people to think. Allah encourages people to reflect. Allah encourages people to gain insight and thus be lit by the light of Allah. Qur'an came down for understanding. Qur'an did not come down for decoration. Qur'an did not come down to be only recited melodiously in your family's presence or the presence of other people. Qur'an did not come down for any of those reasons. It came down mainly to be understood. And if you and I fail to understand the Qur'an, you will find yourself in trouble, because Rasulullah will say, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّي إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. Oh Allah, some of my people had abandoned the Qur'an. Oh Allah, some of my people had abandoned the Qur'an. Fifth level of abandonment is not to practice the Qur'an that you read and the teaching of the Qur'an to be put into your life. Qur'an that you read, Qur'an that you recite and hear, Qur'an that you understand but you don't practice, that is the fifth level of abandonment. And on the day of judgment, you and I will be in trouble. What do we mean by practicing the Qur'an? Putting the Qur'an in our lives from the day we are born until we die, covering every aspect of our lives. Nothing is left from the Qur'an. Nothing is left. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala received the verses, اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا, Allah says, Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. Today we have completed all aspects of our deen on you. We have completed everything that you need to have. As a guide, this is enough. وَأَتْمَمْتُ عَلَيْكُمْ نِعْمَتِي. And we have given you our mercy. وَرَضِيتُ لَكُمُ الْإِسْلَامَ دِينًا. And we have chosen, Allah is saying, Allah has chosen Qur'an as the only way of life. If Qur'an is the only way of life, if Allah has chosen Islam is the only way of life, and if the Qur'an is the guide, and if Allah has completed His deen, you don't need to go anywhere else for guidance. You stick to the Qur'an, because Qur'an is a guidance, hudan. Qur'an is rahmah, is mercy. Qur'an is shifa, healer to our sick hearts. Qur'an is al-furqan, the criteria by which you distinguish between right and wrong. Qur'an is the only way that you can find Allah. Qur'an is the only way you can find salvation. Qur'an is the only way you can find success of this world and in the hereafter. Qur'an has to be put into our lives, into our practices. Otherwise, we find ourselves in the same predicament. وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّي إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. Oh Allah, oh my Lord. Oh, he will say, Rasulullah will say, some of my people had abandoned the Qur'an. Some of my people had abandoned the Qur'an. You don't want Rasulullah to speak like this about you on the Day of Judgment. We don't want Rasulullah to speak against us on the Day of Judgment in this way. My brothers and sisters, sixth level of abandonment is misuse of the Qur'an. And seventh level of abandonment is not to share the Qur'an with the rest of the world. I'll explain these two in the next half of the khutbah, inshallah. I make dua that Allah accept our pleas. Allah enables us to understand the Qur'an, listen to the Qur'an, read the Qur'an, and put the Qur'an in our life every day. Wa akhir da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. قال الله تبارك وتعالى: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. وقال الرسول يا ربي إن قوم اتخذوا هذا القرآن مهجورا. Makes me want to cry, knowing this will be the key witness, the only witness on the Day of Judgment. He could say that about me. I pray, and we should all pray, that we don't become one of those. Ya Allah, protect us, Ya Rabbi. But there is a serious danger, my brothers and sisters, when I look around the Muslim community today, how they use the Qur'an and how unfortunately they abuse the Qur'an. This could be the statement and the witness of our beloved Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sixth level of abandonment is to misuse the Qur'an. How do you misuse the Qur'an? I'll tell you how we misuse the Qur'an. We think Qur'an came down as a medicine for our illnesses. So some people take the Qur'an and write it on a piece of paper and dip it in water and drink the water. Some people write the Qur'an in taweez forms, put it around their necks as amulets. Some people take the Qur'an and rub it on their body. They think this is what the Qur'an came for. And when I speak against it, some people start insulting, accusing me. Some people start attacking me, saying, what are you talking about? We will use the Qur'an in this way. How ignorant are you? Give me an example of the life of Rasulullah when he ever asked a companion to write the Qur'an on a piece of paper and put it around any companion's neck. Give me one example. Or he asked the companions to write the Qur'an on a piece of paper with an ink and dip it in water and drink it. Give me an example. Qur'an did not come down for abuse. Qur'an came down for enlightening the world, bringing the humanity from the depth of darkness and giving them light, challenging the world, and remaining a contemporaneous challenge for eternity. Never will anyone find faults in the Qur'an. وَإِن كُنتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِّمَّا نَزَّلْنَا عَلَىٰ عَبْدِنَا فَأْتُوا بِصُورَةٍ مِّن مِّثْلِهِ. Allah Azza wa Jal says, if you have any doubts about what we have revealed unto our messenger, bring one surah, one chapter like this. This challenge was given 1400 years ago. It was not a challenge of a mumbo jumbo. It was not a superstitious challenge. It was an intellectual challenge. Challenge of writing, challenge of composing, challenge of literature, challenge of putting a book together. Go on, humanity. if you dare, put one chapter like the Qur'an together. One. Nobody has been able to do one. And some Muslims think Qur'an came down for ta'weez. Some Muslims think Qur'an came down for ghost busting. Some Muslims think Qur'an came down for this and that and this and that, completely abandoning the purpose of the Qur'an. Of course, Qur'an has a healing property on the person reading it. Of course, Qur'an has a calming property in the psychology of a person who is reading it. Qur'an has a healing property on the emotion of the person who is reading it and who is listening to it. Of course, it has. But that's not the purpose of the Qur'an. That is the mu'jiza, miracle of the Qur'an. The Qur'an came down with a purpose, and that is to guide humanity from the depth of darkness to light. From worshipping of idols to worshipping Allah, to worshipping of material to worshipping Allah, to worshipping of ism and idols and ideologies to worshipping Allah. Quran came down for that purpose. Don't abuse the Quran by doing all those mumbo jumbo that people do. I saw an advert in one of the newspapers once, £20 per taweez. There is an Imam who gives taweez from the Quran and he prints it as £20. I said, I'm in the wrong job. So unbelievable people are. Abusing the Quran includes having Quran on the wall. I walked into an off-license the other day. They're selling alcohol all around. And in between the alcohol shelves, there was 3 surahs hanging. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ فَلَقٍ قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٍ. 3 surahs. And I asked the brother, what is that? He goes, that's the Quran. And I said, what is the purpose of the Quran hanging here? He goes, to protect me. Protect you from what? From evil eye. I said, but who will protect you on the day of judgment when Allah will say, why did you sell alcohol? He had nothing to say. He had nothing to say. Absolute silence. It's called abuse of the Quran. It's called abuse of the Quran. Don't abuse the Quran. Quran did not come down to be abused. And if you do, on the day of judgment, Allah will say, Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam will say, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّ إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. Some of my people, Ya Allah, abandon the Quran that you gave. And the 7th level of abandonment, and the last one, is that if you don't share the Quran, you have abandoned the Quran. You have mocked the Quran. When Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam received the verse as اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق, he read, he was terrified, he looked for the meaning, and then when he received يا أيها المزمل and يا أيها المدثر, saying, oh Muhammad, the one who is covered up, the one who is shaking under the blanket, get up, rise and deliver, go and deliver. Did he stop? For 23 years, did he stop? No. You and I have the Quran. We keep it in our houses, we keep it in our hearts. We never share the Quran. We never want to share the teachings of the Quran with other people because we're afraid. What are you afraid of? The only book on the face of this earth that has no mistakes. Are you afraid of that? The only book on the face of this earth that has no contradictions. Are you afraid of that? The only book that can guide humanity and make human beings amazing, make the world better. Are you afraid of that? The only book that could lead you to salvation. Are you embarrassed of that? Are you ashamed of that? Are you? You need to rethink about your faith. Share the Quran. Brother, I can't give the Quran to the non-Muslims. Why not? Who do you think Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave the Quran to? Non-Muslims. And you say, I can't give the Quran to the non-Muslims. Who told you you can't give the Quran to the non-Muslims? Quran came down for everybody. Share the teachings of the Quran. And do you know the best form of sharing the Quran? Is exemplify Quran in your life. Exemplify Quran in your life. When I listened to an interview of a non-Muslim recently, he said, I'm very impressed by the Quran. I have never heard a book like this. When I made a documentary for Channel 4 10, 15 years ago, I made a 3-part series called The Qur'an, and I made it with a non-Muslim filmmaker. And after him reading the Qur'an, studying the Qur'an, making the Qur'an with the film with me, I asked him, how is your feeling? He goes to me, I have fallen in love with the Qur'an. I said, wow, what's stopping you from converting, embracing Islam? He goes, Muslims. I said, what do you mean? Because when I look at the Muslims, I don't want to be a Muslim. But I love the Qur'an. Do you know why Muslims are the worst examples of Islam today? Because we are not people of the Qur'an anymore. We are people of our own ego. We're people of our own selfishness. We're people of our own whims and desires. We're people of our own ignorance. We're not people of the Qur'an. People of the Qur'an don't behave like this. People of the Qur'an don't behave like the way we do today. People of the Qur'an ruled the world once upon a time. People of the world guided the world once upon a time. People of the world gave the world science, technology, knowledge, and foundation for all disciplines of knowledge that we have today. People of the world saw Muslims as a people to be respected and honored. Today, Muslims are trampled upon, occupied, bombed, incarcerated, abducted, ruled by despots and illegitimate regimes. Our masajids are closed off on a regular basis. Al-Aqsa is desecrated. Kaaba is ruled by illegitimate regimes and controlled by them. Whole of Middle East is occupied by illegitimate regimes. Most of the Muslim countries are ruled by illegitimate regimes. They're supposed to be Muslims. People of the Qur'an, where are you? Oh, people of the Qur'an, where are you? If we were people of the Qur'an, those fools will not be ruling the Muslim world today. If people of the Qur'an were to rise and just blow their breath in the directions of those despotic rulers, they would drown, they would fly like a tornado would take them away. But people of the Qur'an are supposed to be brave people. They've become cowards today. People of the Qur'an are being bullied and harassed by everybody else because people of the Qur'an have left and abandoned the Qur'an. And Rasul ﷺ will say, وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّي إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. Oh Allah, my people had abandoned the Qur'an, and because they abandoned the Qur'an, their state became like this. My brothers and sisters, it is the month of Ramadan. And I say this with the greatest passion in my heart. Let us return to the Qur'an. Let us make the Qur'an our life. Let us make the Qur'an our daily realities. We will change and the world will change, inshaAllah. Ya Arhamur Rahimin, Ya Akramul Akramin, forgive us, Ya Allah. Forgive us, Ya Allah. Forgive us, Ya Allah. In this very blessed month of Ramadan, remove our weaknesses, Ya Allah. Enable us so that we can come back to the Qur'an, Ya Allah. Make us the people of the Qur'an, Ya Allah. Make us the people of the Qur'an, Ya Allah. Make us the people of the Qur'an, Ya Allah. Enable us so that we can read the Qur'an, Ya Allah. We can listen to the Qur'an, Ya Allah. We can understand the Qur'an, Ya Allah. We can practice the Qur'an, Ya Allah. And we can share the Qur'an, Ya Allah. Ya Arhamur Rahimin. Ya Arhamur Rahimin, Ya Akramul Akramin. Light this world with the light of the Qur'an, Ya Allah. Guide this world with the guidance of the Qur'an, Ya Allah. Heal this world with the healing of the Qur'an, Ya Allah. Ya Arhamur Rahimin, Ya Akramul Akramin. Ya Allah, do not let us be one of those who get accused of abandoning the Qur'an by your beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the day of judgment. Ya Allah, Ya Arhamur Rahimin, don't allow our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to make complaints against us, Ya Allah. Don't make us amongst those, Ya Allah. Ya Arhamur Rahimin, save us, Ya Allah. Protect us, Ya Allah. Empower us, Ya Allah. Bless us, Ya Allah. Ya Arhamur Rahimin, in this blessed month of Ramadan, fill our lives with mercy, Ya Allah. Fill our lives with mercy, Ya Allah. Fill our lives with mercy, Ya Allah. Ya Arhamur Rahimin, in this blessed month of Ramadan, we pray for our brothers and sisters in Al-Aqsa, Ya Allah. Free Palestine, Ya Allah. Free Al-Aqsa, Ya Allah. Free Al-Aqsa, Ya Allah. Free Al-Aqsa, Ya Allah. Free Kashmir from occupation, Ya Allah. Free our brothers and sisters in China, Ya Allah. Free our brothers and sisters in Rohingya, Ya Allah. Free our brothers and sisters in Yemen, Ya Allah. Free our brothers and sisters in Syria, Ya Allah. Free everyone in all parts of the world, Ya Allah. Restore peace and stability on this earth, Ya Allah. Restore peace and stability on this earth, Ya Allah. Ya Arhamur Rahimin, Ya Akramul Akramin, we beg you and we ask you to guide the people of this country to your deen, Ya Allah. Guide them to your deen, Ya Allah. Bring them to your deen, Ya Allah. Keep our children in your deen, Ya Allah. And those of our children who may have left, Ya Allah, bring them back, Ya Rabb. Bring them back, Ya Allah. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروني يذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون والله يعلم ما تصنعون. أقم الصلاة. Please stand up and make the line straight and leave no gaps.